Caitlin's POV. Everyone assumed that after the divorce, Sebastian Wofford would marry the assistant he'd once loved so desperately. But when he married again, his bride was still me. 3 months after we got back together, I noticed a dark reddish smear of dried blood on the seat cushion in his car. Sebastian lifted a brow and said lazily, it was her first time. For once, I didn't fly into one of my usual hysterics. I only asked gently, do you want me to have it cleaned? At a party, Sebastian's friends were loudly discussing the young woman he'd been keeping on the side lately. Seb, when are you bringing the new favorite around for us to meet? She's still in college, right? A CEO running to a little café every day just to wait for some girl to get off her shift, heard you couldn't even hold back in the car. You weren't this fired up even when you were chasing Caitlin back in the day. Someone nearby muttered a reminder, keep it down, Kate's still here. But the man deliberately raised his voice instead. So what if she is? After the divorce, she came crawling back and begged Seb to remarry her because she couldn't handle living poor. All that pride, all that high-end mighty attitude shattered the day her family went bankrupt. Humiliation crashed down on me from every direction. I kept a pleasant smile on my face and sipped my champagne. I didn't do what I usually did, lose all dignity and start screaming. But this time, Sebastian was the one who was displeased. On the drive home, Sebastian's expression was complicated. Caitlin, why didn't you push back tonight when they said all that nasty stuff? They went too far with those jokes today. No matter what, you're still my wife. You should still be shown the respect that comes with that. He paused, then went on. That college girl comes from a humble family. Her mother's sick and needs money to pay the bills. We're just giving each other what the other needs. There are no feelings involved, and even if there were, she could never threaten your place. It was a rare explanation from him, but at that moment, I had no energy to care. When I gave almost no reaction, he raised his voice. Kate, are you even listening to me? I'm listening. My tone was tired, though I still caught the searching look he turned on me. When I opened my eyes and looked at him, I had already put back on the softness I'd worn so often lately. Wasn't it you who said they didn't mean anything by those comments, and that I shouldn't be petty enough to take offense? That girl's had a hard life, and she doesn't know much about the world. Be gentler with her. I thought if I followed Sebastian's logic and said exactly what he wanted to hear, he would nod in satisfaction and say that I was obedient. What I never expected was for the last trace of a smile at the corner of his mouth to disappear. The car jerked to a stop at the curb, and Sebastian's voice grew colder. Caitlin, I don't understand what kind of scene you're trying to make this time. I froze for a second, then slowly took off my earbuds. Sebastian, I haven't made a scene at any point tonight. Couldn't you tell I was offering you my blessing? I thought it was the perfect answer, the kind that should have smoothed over his sudden anger. Instead, it only poured gasoline on the fire. He ground out my name through clenched teeth. Caitlin. I looked at Sebastian and waited quietly for whatever he would do next. Then, out of nowhere, rain came crashing down over New York. Drops pounded hard against the windows. Inside the car, the atmosphere grew even heavier, even more suffocating with every second of rain. Just before Sebastian's temper finally snapped, a thin, bedraggled figure on the sidewalk, trying helplessly to shelter from the storm, abruptly entered his line of sight. It took only a second for his anger to be forcibly smothered by sharp, overwhelming concern. His face dark, he ordered me out of the car. I didn't do what I would have done before, didn't stand there with red-rimmed eyes demanding to know why. I simply got out, exactly as he told me to. The rain hit my body without mercy. It stung. Not long after, Sebastian got out too. His jaw tight, He held an umbrella and walked toward the slender figure he had noticed a moment earlier. He said nothing. He simply seized the girl by the arm and pulled her back toward the car with the kind of force that made refusal impossible. I'd heard people say her name was Kayla Ludlow. Behind me, a young couple suddenly started talking. The girl frowned, her face full of indecision. "Do tattoos hurt a lot?" The boy pulled her into his arms, already pained for her. "Then don't get one if you're scared it'll hurt." The tattoo on the side of my waist, the one I'd gotten at 18, suddenly burned hot. It was the romance Sebastian and I had once shared in our first awakening to love, when we were young and foolish, and certain that feeling alone could last forever. A pity that romance survived only until the 3rd year of our marriage. The moment I discovered he had cheated on me for the first time, my whole world collapsed. 3 years into our marriage, the new assistant he had hired less than a month earlier climbed into his bed. The sight of their bodies tangled together in the sheets felt like a slap after slap across my face. I cried so hard I could barely breathe, like a madwoman, hurling the cruelest words I knew at both of them. Sebastian endured my screaming without a flicker of shame. In families like ours, men keeping women on the side is nothing unusual. Besides, didn't your father cheat when you were only 1 year old? Your mother played blind for all those years and never told you, and life still went on for your family, didn't it? Caitlin, be smart about this. Grow up. Stop shrieking like a lunatic and ruining my mood. In that instant, it felt as if the blood in my veins had frozen. The curse on the tip of my tongue lodged in my throat. I couldn't spit it out, nor could I swallow it down. The man who had once loved me with everything he had was now using the deepest wound of my life to shut me up with contempt. By the time I got home, it was already midnight. The moment I pushed open the front door, the girl curled up on the couch went rigid with alarm. She was exactly Sebastian's type lately. Pretty in that innocent, clean-cut way, young, with the kind of sheltered face that still carried a stubborn streak that refused to lose. I was soaked from the rain, and my head was swimming, but I still forced a smile and, with as much courtesy as I could manage, called the butler and told him to prepare a guest room upstairs for her. One look at the medicated ointment on the table and the mess strewn across the floor told me how wild Sebastian had been this time. I let out a silent sigh and turned to go upstairs. After we were married, I was the one who insisted on sleeping in a separate room from Sebastian. As I passed his room, I heard him grilling his executive assistant, Jonas Gorman, in a sharp, cutting voice. "Why did Kayla go out to work in the rain today? Didn't I tell you to transfer $200,000 to her?" I didn't know how Jonas answered him. I didn't care to know. At 3:00 a.m., my head was throbbing too badly for sleep, so I went downstairs to take some medicine. There I saw Sebastian bracing over Kayla with both hands planted at her sides, forcing the flushed woman in his arms to promise him 3 things. Promise you'll take care of yourself. Promise you'll spend Sebastian's money every day. Promise you'll keep loving Sebastian. But after saying the promises, Kayla still sounded aggrieved. "You're wearing a wedding band that's supposed to mean love, and you're still making me say things like this. So what am I then? Your mistress?" Sebastian let out a short, mocking laugh, slipped off the wedding ring he had designed with his own hands, and tossed it into the trash without a second thought. Happy now. The dizzy spell from my fever sent my stomach churning. I shut the door in a clumsy panic, lay back down on the bed, and pressed a hand to my chest, where the pain cut like a knife. But in the end, the tears still fell, useless and humiliating. Before I agreed to remarry him, I had naively thought that all I had to do was not look and not listen. As long as I could get Mom's belongings back, I could live as a blind woman, a mute woman. it wouldn't matter. But in that moment, I finally understood that some feelings cannot be controlled. I knew I had a fever, but I forced myself to endure it anyway, almost as if I wanted to punish myself for just a little longer. I don't know whether I fell asleep, or whether the fever burned me into a daze. I dreamed of Sebastian at 18. That summer, after college entrance exams were over. We had finally shrugged off the crushing weight of school, traded our stiff uniforms for grown-up suits and formal dresses, and gone to a revolving restaurant in New York. That was where he confessed his love to me for the first time, solemn and earnest. Even the night outside could not hide the flushed, awkward red in his face from sheer nerves. In front of the towering floor-to-ceiling windows, we lost ourselves in each other again and again. Only when we were both completely spent did he point at the moon and swear that he would love me for the rest of his life. A pity that vows do not last forever, nor does love. When I opened my eyes again, I was met by familiar white walls and the sharp smell of disinfectant. What exactly is the point of abusing your own body like this? You had a fever and didn't take any medicine, just stayed alone in your room trying to tough it out. What was that supposed to accomplish? Sebastian's tone was merciless, thick with ridicule. In the past, even if I had come down with nothing more than an ordinary cold, Sebastian would have been beside himself with worry. Back then, he would press his palm to my forehead, his brow furrowed in concern. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Did you take your medicine? Does your head hurt? Do you want some water?" But now, I stared at Sebastian for a long while. There were so many emotions in his eyes: mockery, derision, contempt. Everything except even the slightest trace of tenderness. My heart felt as though it were being scorched by a fire with no name. Before remarrying him, I had warned myself over and over again not to hope for Sebastian's love anymore. I forced a smile. "I'm sorry, I wasted your time. The butler could have brought me to the hospital." Sebastian lifted a brow, apparently surprised by my attitude. I still remember the day we were married. He had stood outside the city hall with that arrogant smile and said, "See, without me, you're nothing. You can't pay off your debts, you can't afford fancy restaurants, and even the place you live is worse than the servants' quarters back home. I protected you too well all those years. You've never really suffered. You have no idea how cruel the world outside can be. I wanted to keep spoiling you forever, but your demands became too much, so much that I started to resent you."